Hey everyone, today we're diving into a book of the Bible that honestly reads like a blockbuster drama, 1 Samuel. You've got it all: prophets, huge battles, a king who totally flames out, and a new hero waiting in the wings. But what if that's just the surface story?
Right? What if the real plot isn't about politics or the switch from judges to kings? What if it's about something way deeper, something a lot more personal? That's exactly what we're going to uncover here. We're peeling back the layers to find that hidden narrative.
And this, right here, sets the stage perfectly. On one hand, the common view is pretty straightforward: a prophet, a bad king, a new king. A simple historical handoff. But the deeper truth? Oh, that's where it gets interesting. It's a spiritual showdown. God's voice versus what people want, the heart versus just looking the part, and a whole new definition of what it means to be a true king.
Okay, so first up, a voice in the chaos. To really get this, we have to rewind to the very beginning. The time of the judges was fizzling out, and it was a mess. A time when, as the text says, everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Total chaos. And it's right into that static and confusion that God starts to speak again.
It all kicks off with a woman named Hannah. Now, we usually see her story as just this tragic tale of waiting and barrenness. But the Bible says something really specific. The Lord had closed her womb. See, this wasn't some kind of punishment. It was a preparation. God was building this incredible depth of prayer and desperation in Hannah that was absolutely necessary to bring forth the prophet who would change everything. So what looked like a painful, frustrating delay was actually God setting the stage for destiny.
I mean, just let that sink in. The word of the Lord was rare. It was a time of spiritual silence, where people were just lost, totally lacking direction. Samuel's birth isn't just a happy ending for Hannah. It's the turning point. It's the moment God's voice finally starts to cut through all that noise.
So when God finally calls out to young Samuel, the boy says, "Speak, for your servant hears." But that Hebrew word for hear, shamar, it's so much bigger than just letting sound enter your ears. It means to listen, sure, but it also means to obey, to respond, to actually do something about what you've heard. It's obedience in motion. Samuel wasn't just being a polite kid, he was completely surrendering his entire life to God's direction.
Now, this new hotline to God gets put to the test, and fast. The Israelites get crushed in a battle, and the Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of God's presence, is captured. On the surface, this looks like a catastrophic failure for God, a total defeat. But it's actually God pulling the rug out from under Israel's false religion. See, they'd started treating the Ark like a good luck charm, a magic box, trusting the symbol instead of the God it stood for. So God let their idol get taken away, forcing them to figure out if they wanted him or just his stuff.
All right, so next up, the king people wanted. You'd think after all that chaos, the people would turn back to God, right? Nope. They drew the exact wrong conclusion. Instead of fixing their hearts, they decided they needed something else they could see, something tangible. They demanded a king.
And you know, we might look at this and think it's just a practical political move. Hey, let's get organized like all the other nations. But God saw it for exactly what it was, a spiritual rebellion. He literally tells Samuel, they haven't rejected you, they've rejected me from being king over them. Oof. They didn't want God's invisible leadership anymore. They wanted a guy they could see and, frankly, control.
So God gives them exactly what they asked for. Enter Saul. And boy, did he look the part. He was tall, he was impressive, he was charismatic, he was everything the people thought a leader should be. He was the perfect king, if you were only judging by the outside. And that, as we're about to see, is a really dangerous way to choose a leader.
In this one line, right here, is the story of Saul's downfall. He thought he could pull off these big, flashy moves for God, and that it would make up for his disobedience. But God just cuts right through it. He makes it crystal clear: I don't want your performance, I want your heart. I want you to listen and obey. All of Saul's impressive wins meant absolutely nothing without that simple core of surrender.
So now, with the failure of the people's choice, the stage is set for God to reveal his choice. And this, my friends, is where the central theme of this entire book just snaps into crystal clear focus.
Let's just clear this up right now. A lot of people think of David as God's plan B. You know, Saul messed up, so God had to scramble and find a replacement. No way, that's not it at all. Saul was the people's plan. David was always God's plan A. God wasn't course-correcting, he was finally revealing what he intended from the very beginning. And here's why. This verse is the key that unlocks everything in 1 Samuel. Samuel, the great prophet, is looking at all of David's tall, strong, impressive older brothers, ready to anoint one of them. But God stops him cold. He basically says, "You humans are all obsessed with the outside, with what you can see. But I'm looking for one thing, and one thing only, the heart." And he found that heart in a shepherd boy out in a field that nobody else even bothered to invite.
This whole focus on the heart completely reframes even the stories we think we know best. Take David and Goliath. We see it as the ultimate underdog story, right? The little guy against the giant. But it's actually a story about covenant authority. Everyone else saw a 9-foot-tall killing machine. David saw a guy who was defying the armies of the living God. His confidence wasn't in his slingshot, it was in God's unbreakable promise, his covenant with his people.
So, as we pull all these different threads together, it becomes so clear. 1 Samuel isn't just a dusty old history book. No, it's a profound, timeless lesson in what God is actually looking for.
We can really boil the whole epic story down to these 4 powerful truths. First, Hannah teaches us that what feels like a delay might actually be divine preparation. Second, Samuel shows us that real leadership is all about listening. Third, Saul is our flashing red light, a warning that appearance is a really dangerous distraction. And finally, David reveals the ultimate truth of the book. The heart is what God chooses, every single time.
And that leaves us with one last pretty critical question to chew on. In our world, a world that's still so obsessed with image, with charisma, with follower counts, and outward success, if God were choosing a leader today, for a country, a company, a community, even a family, what would he really be looking for? Well, as 1 Samuel makes incredibly clear, the answer has everything to do with the heart.